He's a man of strong Christian faith, and he is appalled by the allegations. I suspect now that he's, as it were, banished to the sort of open prison somewhere on the Sandringham estate.
This is the story of a man who once moved in the highest royal circles in Britain, and how a new memoir from Princess Diana's former butler is now lifting the lid on years of shocking, entitled behavior that many people never saw coming. What looked polished on the outside may have been very different behind palace doors. Even Queen Elizabeth II, known for her calm authority, reportedly struggled to fully control what was happening at times. Paul Burrell spent more than 2 decades working inside the British royal household, and the memories from those years clearly stayed with him.
He will be sensing the need to give duty of care. This man is a broken, finished man at best. I would strongly believe that he would very much like him to testify, but knows that to stand up and say that is a hiding to...
He first served as a footman to the Queen, then later became butler to King Charles III, back when he was still Prince of Wales, putting him right at the center of royal life. Burrell became most famous as the personal butler and trusted confidant to Princess Diana, a role he began in 1987 and continued until her tragic death in Paris in 1997. That close connection is a big reason why his perspective still draws so much attention today. His earlier memoir, A Royal Duty, sold more than 2 million copies worldwide, proving there was huge public interest in his experiences.
Great to have you. There are, of course, reports today accusing Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor of sharing another official document with one of his business contacts, but we've seen a week of negative headlines and revelations. How concerned will the king be about this and all the allegations?
It would be astonishing if he wasn't concerned.
Now, at 67, he has released another book titled The Royal Insider: My Life with the Queen, the King, and Princess Diana, published in January 2026 by Hachette Mobius. The claims he raises about Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor are presented as serious allegations that some readers may find difficult to ignore.
Appalled by the allegations, and of course affected in his role as monarch as well, because the headlines are all about this, which, you know, no institution wants that, and he is trying to do, and is doing, an extraordinary job in his role as head of state.
According to Burrell, the behavior he witnessed was not rare, but something he says happened often. He explained his experiences directly, saying, "I had lots of interactions with Andrew over the years. I saw his pomposity firsthand. He would tell people to F off, get out of here, F off," which was obscene, really, the way he treated people. I remember the staff revolting because they were kept up late at night. These statements reflect his personal account and perspective, which remains part of ongoing public discussion. That mention of late nights might sound minor at first, but it actually connects to a bigger pattern he describes in the book. Small details sometimes reveal much larger issues when placed in context.
People have to remember, when they just think of him or Andrew, what is in his mind. Look at he and the Queen. Their constant concern about those women who've been sexually violated, those who've been ill-treated. The Queen was, I think, just yesterday doing that.
Burrell claims Andrew hosted dinner gatherings that kept palace staff working until midnight, and the situation reportedly became serious enough that Queen Elizabeth II herself stepped in to address it. What stands out in his version of events is that even a direct reprimand from the monarch allegedly did not create lasting change, which paints a revealing picture of family dynamics behind the scenes. He also alleges that after being scolded by his mother, Andrew and Sarah Ferguson refused to allow household staff into their rooms, choosing to remain in bed for long periods, and, in his words, abusing the system entirely. Burrell suggests these patterns did not appear suddenly, and his explanation for how everything began points clearly toward one specific influence, setting up even more controversy ahead. Burrell claims Andrew was treated differently from the start, describing him as someone who grew up feeling protected and rarely challenged.
Good question. He took very tough action back in October when he stripped him of his title. He was kicked out of the Royal Lodge at Windsor. He takes that role as the most important part of what he does. But he's a brother. Now, they may not be that close, but he's nonetheless a brother. And I suspect now that he's, as it were, banished.
He even suggested that maybe our dear late Queen was to blame for that because she never said no to her favorite son. In Burrell's view, timing played a huge role. because by the time Andrew was born, the Queen finally had more room in her life to focus on being a mother in ways she had not been able to with Charles and Anne, which he believes led to extra attention and affection. Prince Philip, according to Burrell, acted as a strict gatekeeper for most family members, making sure senior royals followed proper channels before approaching the Queen directly. But he says Andrew often moved outside those boundaries, creating a different dynamic that stood out compared to everyone else around him. What makes this account more striking is Burrell's claim that the sense of privilege did not stay limited to one person. Sarah Ferguson, now 66, entered the royal world from a much more ordinary background, described by Burrell as a farmer's daughter and the offspring of a polo manager. He says Andrew told her she could have anything she wanted, which he believes shaped how their lifestyle developed together. She had it all, Burrell recalled, saying that because everything she wanted she had, she also became used to a certain level of comfort and expectation, and he described the couple as being very similar in that sense. Since then, Ferguson has left Royal Lodge, and both her Duchess of York title and Andrew's own titles were eventually removed. That outcome took years to unfold, leading up to October 30th, 2025, when King Charles III officially removed Andrew's remaining royal titles and honors after a long period of public controversy. Back in 2019, Andrew stepped away from royal duties following a widely criticized BBC interview about his past. Commentators at the time described the interview as deeply damaging to his public reputation. The man once known formally as His Royal Highness Prince Andrew, Duke of York, is now referred to simply as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, marking a major shift in status and public perception. Today, the palace no longer speaks on his behalf, which signals just how much the situation has changed over the years. Legal and public pressures connected to past events have continued to follow him, keeping the story in the headlines and under scrutiny. What makes this situation even more complicated is how the fallout didn't just affect public titles, it also reshaped relationships inside the royal family itself. Reports over the years have suggested growing distance between Andrew and other senior royals, with trust becoming a major issue behind closed doors. When someone who once held such a visible role suddenly disappears from official life, people naturally start asking questions. Financial pressure also became part of the conversation, especially after Andrew stepped back from royal duties and lost access to certain official support systems. Questions about how he would maintain his lifestyle began circulating, and media coverage only intensified as details surfaced about property arrangements, security costs, and ongoing expenses tied to royal living standards. Even without formal duties, expectations around status did not instantly disappear, which created a complicated reality to manage. At the same time, public perception shifted dramatically, and rebuilding a reputation proved far more difficult than losing one. Once headlines turn negative, they tend to stay that way, and every new development gets viewed through that same lens. Observers noted that silence from the palace spoke volumes, because historically, royal institutions often step in to manage narratives when possible. In this case, that support appeared limited, signaling a clear boundary had been drawn. Burrell's broader message suggests that personality, privilege, and environment all combine to create a situation that unfolded over decades rather than overnight. Whether people agree with his perspective or not, his account adds another layer to a story that continues to evolve, with consequences still playing out in real time. What stands out most is how quickly status can change when public trust starts to break down. For decades, Andrew moved through life with the confidence that comes from royal privilege, but once controversy took center stage, that protection seemed to weaken in ways few people expected. The shift from senior royal to private citizen was not just symbolic, it changed daily reality in very real ways. There were also reports of tension over living arrangements, particularly surrounding Royal Lodge, the large property connected to his former position. Questions about who would cover maintenance costs, security, and long-term responsibilities became part of the wider conversation, showing how complicated life can become when titles disappear, but expectations remain. Situations like this rarely have simple solutions, especially when family, money, and public image are all tied together. At the same time, the royal institution itself had to protect its own reputation, which meant creating distance where necessary. Observers pointed out that modern monarchy depends heavily on public approval, and any controversy involving one member can affect everyone else. That pressure likely influenced decisions behind the scenes, even if the full details were never shared publicly. Burrell's account ultimately paints a picture of someone shaped by privilege from an early age, surrounded by systems that rarely pushed back until much later in life. Whether readers see his perspective as insight or opinion, the story highlights how power, family loyalty, and personal choices can collide in ways that create long-lasting consequences. And as more details continue to surface, the public fascination with what really happened behind palace walls shows no sign of fading anytime soon. The situation took another serious turn when the Metropolitan Police confirmed they were reviewing information connected to Andrew after an email surfaced that allegedly showed him asking his police bodyguard to obtain personal details about his accuser, Virginia Giuffre, back in 2011, including her social security number and date of birth. Whether any officer actually acted on that request has not been confirmed, but the existence of the message itself raised new questions and renewed public attention around the case. In a separate development, emails reviewed by the BBC suggested Andrew may have shared sensitive material from a 2010 Southeast Asia trade trip. These documents were reportedly found among millions of files released by the United States Department of Justice, adding another layer of scrutiny to events that were already under heavy examination. Andrew has consistently denied all allegations made by Giuffre, maintaining his position throughout the years as legal and public debates continued. When asked about Burrell's book, the palace responded with a brief statement, "We don't comment on such books." That short reply spoke volumes to observers, signaling distance without directly engaging in the claims being presented. On a more immediate, everyday level, reports also suggested changes in how staff interacted with Andrew at his current residence. A report in The Sun claimed that a growing number of palace staff members had chosen not to work for him, with one anonymous source stating they were told they were under no obligation to do so if they felt uncomfortable. "There's already quite a list saying no thanks," the source said, adding that there was understandably a lot of disquiet as he is now viewed as the total pariah. These statements reflect reported workplace sentiment rather than confirmed institutional policy, but they contributed to the broader public narrative. For people who once worked around him, the household staff, the employees managing long hours, and those who experienced tense moments, there appears to have been a shift in perception over time. What Paul Burrell describes in his memoir is presented as something he believes had circulated quietly inside palace walls for years. A man shaped by privilege, strongly protected within the family structure, and rarely challenged in ways that might have changed behavior earlier. Now, the landscape looks very different. The royal titles are gone, official royal protection is gone, and the Queen herself is no longer there to provide the same personal shield that once existed. What remains, according to reports and commentary, is a figure increasingly isolated from the institution he was once born into, with some former staff choosing to distance themselves completely. What makes this entire story even more striking is how quickly influence can disappear when the structure supporting it is no longer there. For years, Andrew operated inside one of the most powerful institutions in the world, surrounded by tradition, protocol, and protection. But once that structure pulled back, the reality looked very different, and the contrast was impossible to ignore. Observers have pointed out that reputation inside royal circles often depends on perception just as much as official rank. When public confidence drops, the ripple effects move fast, affecting relationships, opportunities, and even everyday interactions. People who once stayed silent may begin to speak more openly, while others simply create distance, choosing not to be connected to controversy at all. There is also a deeper question underneath everything Burrell describes. How much responsibility belongs to the individual, and how much comes from the environment that shaped them? Growing up with extreme privilege can create expectations that feel normal to the person living inside it, even if they appear shocking to everyone else. That disconnect between personal reality and public reaction is where many high-profile downfalls begin. At the center of it all is a dramatic shift in identity. Someone once introduced with multiple titles, honors, and formal recognition is now living a far quieter existence, without the same institutional backing that defined most of his life. That kind of transformation is rare, especially on such a global stage, and it explains why public fascination with the story continues to grow instead of fading away. And perhaps the biggest question still hanging in the air is not about the past, but the future. Whether any path to rebuilding trust or reputation even exists after so much damage has already been done. At this point, the story is no longer just about one person. It has become a reflection of how power, loyalty, and accountability collide inside institutions built on image and tradition. When someone grows up surrounded by privilege, constant protection can blur the line between confidence and entitlement, and that line often only becomes visible once problems reach the public stage. What once felt normal inside the royal bubble can suddenly look shocking when seen from the outside world. There is also the emotional reality that headlines rarely capture. Families, even royal ones, are still made up of parents, offspring, siblings, and complicated feelings that don't disappear just because crowns are involved. Loyalty can make people defend each other longer than they should, and protective instincts can delay difficult decisions. But when consequences finally arrive, they tend to arrive all at once, creating a dramatic shift that feels sudden to the public even if it has been building quietly for years behind closed doors. Burrell's perspective feeds into a larger conversation about how environments shape behavior over time. Systems designed to protect status can sometimes prevent personal growth if boundaries are rarely enforced early on. When someone spends decades being shielded from criticism, accountability later in life can feel overwhelming, especially when it unfolds under global media attention. That pressure alone can change how a person responds, reacts, and even sees themselves. Another factor is identity. For most of his life, Andrew's identity was closely tied to royal titles, ceremonial roles, and institutional support. When those elements disappear, it does not just change public perception. It can change how someone understands their own place in the world. Losing status on such a visible stage is rare, and adjusting to that reality can be deeply challenging, both practically and psychologically. Public opinion has also evolved in ways that make comebacks more difficult than in the past. Modern audiences expect transparency, accountability, and responsibility from public figures, especially those connected to historic institutions. Silence, distance, or limited responses can sometimes protect an organization, but they can also leave individuals facing public judgment largely on their own. That dynamic creates a powerful contrast between past privilege and present isolation. What remains clear is that trust, once damaged on a global stage, is incredibly hard to rebuild. Every new report, every interview, and every memoir adds another layer to a narrative that continues to shape perception. Whether history eventually views this chapter with sympathy, criticism, or a mix of both, the impact has already reshaped reputations, relationships, and legacies in ways that will likely be discussed for decades. And the biggest unanswered question still lingers: whether redemption is even possible once a fall from grace reaches this level of visibility. If you watch this and have thoughts, drop them in the comments below. If this breakdown made you see things differently, hit subscribe and stay locked in for more deep dives like this. Don't forget to like the video and share it with someone who needs to see it.